A buffalo rejected at auction, scarred and shrouded in mystery, carries a secret that could change the fate of anyone who dares to get close. When the past starts to chase, truth becomes a threat. The morning mist clung to the mountains of Aspen Ridge on that winter day. Emily Carter gazed out the window of the small ranch she'd inherited from her grandparents, feeling the cold air seep into her lungs. At 24, she was about to finish her veterinary degree, and the property had become her refuge after the loss of her loved ones. Another day, another obligation, she murmured to herself as she pulled on a wool coat and grabbed her bag. Professor Harrison, her advisor at the university, had insisted all students attend the regional livestock auction as a requirement for graduation. For Emily, who specialized in small and exotic animals, the idea of spending hours watching cattle sales couldn't be less appealing. Her phone rang as she headed toward the old pickup truck she'd also inherited. "On your way to the auction?" "I had to..." The cheerful voice of Sophia Reynolds, her college friend, came through the line. "Just leaving now. Honestly, I'd rather be at the clinic taking care of the baby toucans we rescued last week." "I know you're not into large animals, but try to see it as an experience. Who knows, you might find something interesting there." Sophia's words turned out to be strangely prophetic when, 2 hours later, Emily found herself standing among dozens of ranchers in the auction barn. The smell of strong coffee mixed with the distinct scent of livestock, creating an atmosphere that made her uneasy. The loud voices and boisterous laughter clashed with her reserved nature. "Look who decided to show up, the little pet vet." Professor Harrison's deep voice startled her. "I hope you're taking notes, Emily. A good veterinarian needs to understand every aspect of the business, even if your specialty is different." Emily nodded with a polite smile, though inwardly she felt a flicker of irritation. She discreetly stepped away, moving toward a quieter corner of the barn. That's when she saw him for the first time. Separated from the other animals in a distant pen, a massive black buffalo stood completely still. Unlike the restless cattle, he seemed to observe everything with unsettling calm. The visible scars on his body told stories Emily couldn't decipher, but they immediately sparked her professional curiosity. "That one's not even fit for slaughter," a portly rancher beside her remarked, making her realize she'd gotten too close to the pen. Too quiet. Looks like something broke him inside. "What happened to him?" Emily asked, unable to hold back her curiosity. "No one really knows." "It was brought from Horizon Ranch, the one past the ridge. They say he was one of the best breeding bulls in the area, but after a while he started acting strange. Doesn't attack, doesn't run, just watches." Emily felt a shiver run down her spine as the buffalo's gaze fixed on her. There was something in those eyes that went beyond ordinary understanding. It wasn't just a frightened or sick animal. There was an almost palpable awareness there. "Ladies and gentlemen, let's move to the final lot of the day." The auctioneer's amplified voice echoed through the barn. "An undocumented buffalo, sold at minimum to cover transport costs. Any takers?" Silence filled the space. The ranchers exchanged uninterested glances, some chuckling at the situation. The buffalo remained motionless, its eyes now fixed on the empty space ahead. "No one. Come on, it's practically a steal," insisted the auctioneer, visibly eager to wrap things up. Without fully understanding why, Emily raised her hand, an impulsive gesture, almost involuntary, that even surprised herself. "Sold to the woman in the green coat," announced the auctioneer, with obvious relief at closing the deal. As she signed the purchase papers, Emily still didn't fully grasp what had driven her to that decision. Something in that buffalo's eyes had called to her in an inexplicable way, as if it were asking for help. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Let us know which city you're watching from. Stay tuned. "You bought a buffalo?" Sophia's voice echoed through the phone with a mix of disbelief and amusement. "Emily Carter, the defender of small animals, now owns a buffalo." Emily sighed, watching through the kitchen window the massive animal, now occupying the makeshift stable behind the farmhouse. 3 days had passed since the auction, and she still couldn't rationally explain her decision. "I know, it sounds crazy, but you should have seen his eyes, Sophia. There was something different, as if he was asking for help." Since when do buffalo ask for help with their eyes? Sophia asked skeptically. I think you've been spending too much time alone on this ranch. Maybe Sophia was right, Emily thought. Maybe the loneliness after her grandparents' departure was affecting her judgment. But something inside her knew there was more to this story. Anyway, what are you going to do with him now? I called him Montana, Emily replied, surprising herself with how naturally the name came. I'll take care of him until I figure out what's wrong. You should take this Montana to Dr. Victoria Stone for an exam. She's the best large animal specialist in the area. Sophia's suggestion made sense. Emily mentally noted to call the vet on Monday, but for now she decided it was time to try approaching her unexpected new guest. She grabbed an apple from the fruit bowl and walked slowly toward the stable. The day was unusually cold for that time of year, and the surrounding mountains seemed wrapped in a mysterious aura. Montana stood motionless, just like at the auction, his deep eyes watching her every move. Hey, big guy, Emily said softly, keeping a safe distance. I brought something for you. She held out the apple, but the buffalo showed no interest. He kept staring at her with that piercing gaze that seemed to see right through her soul. You know, I don't have experience with animals your size. My specialty is birds, rabbits, stray dogs. She kept talking, more to fill the uncomfortable silence than because she thought the animal understood. But I'll do my best to help you. That's when she noticed something strange, a nearly imperceptible scar behind Montana's right ear, different from the other marks on his body. This one looked surgical, too precise to have been caused by an accident or rough handling. Emily took a step forward to examine it closer, momentarily forgetting her caution. Surprisingly, Montana remained still, letting her approach closer than any wild animal normally would. What did they do to you? She murmured, lightly tracing the outline of the scar with her fingers. A chill ran down her spine when she realized the mark formed a pattern that faintly resembled a sideways figure 8, the symbol for infinity. At that exact moment, Emily Carter's phone vibrated in her pocket, making her jerk away abruptly. It was a message from an unknown number. The buffalo shouldn't be with you. For your safety, we recommend returning it immediately. Final warning. Emily's heart raced. How did anyone know about Montana, and why would this be a danger to her? When she looked back at the animal, she noticed something that made her freeze. A tear was slowly rolling down the buffalo's right eye. Impossible, she whispered to herself. Buffaloes don't cry from emotion like humans. There had to be a medical explanation, some kind of eye irritation. But the timing with the threatening message was too disturbing to ignore. That night, Emily barely slept. With every sound from the ranch, she imagined intruders coming for Montana. Around 3 in the morning, a particularly loud noise jolted her out of bed. She grabbed a flashlight and, with her heart pounding, cautiously made her way to the stable. To her shock, Montana was standing, restless for the first time since his arrival, his eyes fixed on the darkness of the forest surrounding the property. Emily pointed the flashlight in the same direction and caught a brief glint were those eyes, before the darkness swallowed everything again. Is someone there? She called, trying to keep her voice steady. Silence was her only answer, but the feeling of being watched didn't leave her. Montana snorted softly, as if trying to communicate something. It's okay, big guy, she murmured, instinctively moving closer to the animal for safety. No one's taking you from here. That's when Emily made a decision. The next morning she would call Dr. Victoria Stone and schedule an appointment as soon as possible. There was something extraordinary about that buffalo, and she was determined to find out what it was, even if it meant facing threats from unknown origins. The sky threatened rain as Emily parked her truck in the veterinary college lot. She'd managed to get an appointment with Dr. Victoria Stone that same afternoon after a phone call where she'd tried, with little success, to explain Montana's peculiar situation. I don't know if I did the right thing bringing you here, Emily murmured, looking in the rearview mirror at the trailer where the buffalo remained motionless. The transport had been surprisingly easy. Montana had stepped into the trailer without resistance, as if understanding the purpose of the trip. Sophia. Reynolds waited at the entrance of the large animal department, her face a mix of curiosity and skepticism. So this is the famous Montana? She cautiously approached the trailer. You weren't exaggerating about him being quiet. Too quiet for an animal this size, Emily agreed. It's almost like he's waiting for something. A woman's voice finished behind them. Dr. Victoria Stone, a middle-aged woman with graying hair pulled into a tight bun, approached with determined steps. Her experienced eyes examined the buffalo with professional intensity. Dr. Stone, thank you for seeing us on such short notice. Emily extended her hand. This is my friend Sophia, who's also in her final year of vet school. The doctor gave Sophia a brief nod, but her focus remained on the animal. Interesting, she murmured without looking away. Let's get him inside. I have an exam room ready. With the help of 2 assistants, they guided Montana into a spacious room equipped with specialized veterinary tools. The buffalo followed docilely, showing none of the stress expected from a wild animal in an unfamiliar environment. How long have you had him? The doctor asked, pulling on gloves. Just 4 days. I bought him at an auction where no one else showed interest. Do you know anything about his origin? Emily hesitated. Only that he came from a ranch called Horizon beyond the ridge. Dr. Stone's expression shifted for an almost imperceptible moment, a flicker of recognition quickly masked by professional neutrality. I see, she said, beginning the physical exam. Let's see what we're dealing with. Over the next hour, the vet conducted a series of meticulous tests. She took his temperature, checked reflexes, and examined teeth, eyes, and ears. Emily watched each procedure closely while Sophia took notes. Doctor, I noticed this scar behind his ear, Emily pointed out as Victoria neared the area. It looks surgical. The vet adjusted her glasses and studied the mark carefully. Interesting, she murmured, more to herself than to the students. Very interesting. She moved to a tray of instruments and returned with a small device that Emily recognized as a microchip scanner. Let's check if he's identified. The device emitted a high-pitched sound as it passed over the scar, but not in the usual way animals are identified. What was that? Asked Sophia, stepping closer. Dr. Victoria Stone furrowed her brow. It's not a conventional microchip, it's something different. She set the scanner down and picked up another instrument, which looked like a small flashlight. Let's test some behavioral responses. To Emily's surprise, the doctor began moving the light in specific patterns in front of Montana's eyes. The buffalo followed the movements with unsettling precision. Complex visual pattern recognition, the ESO veterinarian murmured. Immediate response without prior training. Next, she stepped back and clapped her hands in a specific sequence. 2 quick claps, a pause, then 3 claps. Montana immediately stomped his hoof on the ground, replicating the exact same pattern. Emily and Sophia exchanged stunned glances. Is this normal? Emily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Dr. Stone stepped away from the buffalo and removed her gloves with slow, deliberate movements. No, it's not normal, she finally replied. This animal has undergone some kind of advanced cognitive intervention. What do you mean? Sophia pressed. Are you talking about experiments? The veterinarian glanced at the closed door, as if making sure they were alone before continuing in a low voice. I've heard rumors about Horizon Ranch. They said they were doing more than just raising cattle for slaughter. She took a deep breath. A few years ago, I treated a horse with similar markings. The animal displayed unusual behaviors, almost human-like. Before I could investigate further, the owner came back with a court order to retrieve it. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. She immediately remembered the threatening message she had received. Someone sent me a message saying I should return the buffalo, that it was for my own safety. Dr. Victoria Stone's expression hardened. Emily, you need to be careful. I don't know what they did to this animal, but clearly someone doesn't want this going public. She hesitated. I know someone who might be able to help. A former military man named Marshall. He once mentioned something about government experiments. On animals. I'll give you his contact, but be discreet. When they left the university, the sky had finally opened up in a torrential downpour. Emily drove in silence, processing everything she had just learned. Are you really going to go through with this? Sophia asked, worried. It seems dangerous. Emily glanced in the rearview mirror at Montana, perfectly still despite the bumps in the road. "I don't have a choice," she replied. "Whatever they did to him, I can't just ignore it." The rain continued to fall relentlessly as Emily arrived at her ranch. The dark sky and distant thunder created an atmosphere as tense as her thoughts. After settling Montana in the stable, she stepped inside, soaked and mentally exhausted. Dr. Stone's revelations had opened a door to a world Emily never imagined existed. Cognitive experiments on animals, secret government interventions. It sounded like the plot of a sci-fi movie, not something that could be happening in the quiet mountains of Aspen Ridge. Wrapped in a blanket on the living room couch, Emily held the piece of paper where the vet had written Marshall's contact. Should she call him right away? Or would it be wiser to dig a little deeper first? The sound of a phone notification interrupted her thoughts. It was a message from Nathan Brooks, a college classmate known for his exceptional computer skills. Nathan was responding to the message Emily had sent earlier, asking if he could help her investigate Horizon Ranch. "I can help you, but not over text. Let's talk through my secure server. Access this link." Emily hesitated for a moment. Was she really willing to dive deeper into this mystery? She glanced out the window toward the stable where Montana rested. Something about that animal connected with her in a way she couldn't explain. Making up her mind, she clicked the link Nathan had sent. A simple interface opened on the screen with a single chat line. "Secure now. What exactly are you looking for?" Nathan's message appeared. Emily quickly typed, "I need information about a ranch called Horizon. I bought a buffalo from there that's showing strange behavior and possible experiment markings." There was a long pause before the reply came. "Horizon isn't a name you should be mentioning in regular messages. They have powerful connections. Give me a few hours." The screen went idle. Emily brewed a strong coffee and settled in to wait. The rain intensified outside, creating a curtain of water that further isolated the small farm from the rest of the world. Nearly 3 hours later, well past midnight, the computer chimed with an alert. Nathan was back. "I found some interesting things. Horizon Ranch officially exists as a cattle genetic enhancement center, but their financial records show regular transfers from a company called Neural Tech, which in turn receives funding from the Department of Defense through a program called Project Watchdog." Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the night air. "Do you know what this Project Watchdog is about?" she asked. "Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, I've seen mentions in conspiracy forums and ex-military circles. They talk about experiments to create organic sentinels, animals with enhanced cognitive abilities, to serve as surveillance systems in remote areas." "That's insane," Emily typed, though the pieces were starting to fall into place. "The Hummy, behavior of Montana, his apparent awareness, the way he followed complex patterns. There's more," Nathan continued. "I sent you some files. They're satellite images of the ranch over the last 5 years. Notice how the structure has been expanding, especially in the West Wing." Emily opened the images, noting the property's evolution. From an ordinary ranch to a complex with buildings that looked like laboratories and fenced areas that didn't resemble normal pens. "Why isn't anyone talking about this? How can they hide something this big?" "Power and money, Emily, and we're talking about rural Colorado, not a major city full of investigative journalists. Besides, officially, they're just developing genetic enhancement techniques to make you, Hess agribusiness, more competitive." Emily was about to respond when the lights in her house flickered and went out. The computer, connected to an emergency battery, kept running, but she felt a knot in her stomach. "I need to check. The power's out," she typed hurriedly. "Be careful. If you're right about the buffalo, people might be watching you." With her phone flashlight, Emily walked to the external breaker box. The rain had eased to a fine drizzle, but the cold wind cut across her face. As she approached the meter, she immediately noticed something was wrong. The main breaker had been manually switched off. A branch snapped to her right. Emily spun quickly, her heart pounding, illuminating the darkness with her phone's weak light. "Is someone there?" she called, trying to keep her voice steady. Silence, only the sound of drizzle and leaves rustling in the wind. With trembling hands, she flipped the breaker back on. The house lights flickered back to life, briefly revealing a human silhouette near the edge of the property before the figure vanished into the darkness. Emily ran back inside and locked all the doors. Her hands shook as she typed to Nathan. "Someone's watching me." The breaker was manually turned off. "Get out of there now," came the immediate reply. "Come to the city. Stay at a hotel. I can't abandon Montana." A long pause before the next message. "Then be prepared. I'll send someone I trust to keep an eye on your property. In the meantime, call this Marshall guy. If he has military connections, he might know more than I've been able to find out." Emily looked out the window again, into the darkness that now seemed to hide unknown threats. The feeling of being watched wouldn't leave her. In her pocket, the paper with Marshall's number felt like it weighed a ton. It was time to find out how deep this conspiracy went. Morning. Arrived with the first sunny day after the storm, but Emily had barely slept. She'd spent the night drifting between short, restless naps and long stretches of vigilance, watching through the window for any suspicious movement near the ranch. Montana also seemed on edge, his stance in the stable more tense than usual. 9 in the morning, after checking the number 3 times, Emily finally worked up the courage to call Marshall. The phone rang 4 times before a deep voice answered. "Talk." The blunt greeting caught her off guard. "My name is Emily Carter. Dr. Victoria Stone gave me your number. She thought you might be able to help me with a delicate matter." Silence. On the other end, Emily could only hear controlled breathing. "What kind of matter?" The voice sounded cautious. "It's about a buffalo I bought at an auction. It came from Horizon Ranch and shows signs of," she hesitated, "cognitive experiments." A heavy sigh came through the line. "I don't discuss these things over the phone," he said finally. "I'm in town today. Mountain Cafe at 11 a.m. Back table." The call ended abruptly. Emily stared at the phone, wondering if she'd made a mistake mentioning the ranch so directly. But there was no turning back now. The meeting was set. The Mountain Cafe was in the historic center of Aspen. Ridge, an old establishment mostly frequented by elderly locals and the occasional tourist, Emily chose a strategic spot where she could watch the entrance without being immediately noticed. At 10:55 a.m., a man in his 60s with unmistakable military bearing walked in. His gray hair was cropped close to his skull, a faint scar above. His left eyebrow and eyes that seemed to assess every detail of the room. Without hesitation, he walked straight to Emily's table, as if he already knew exactly who she was. "Miss Carter," he said, sitting down without waiting for an invitation. "I'm Marshall. How did you know who I was?" Emily asked, unsettled. A dry smile curved the man's lips. "Your name popped up in the systems yesterday. They're watching you." He gestured to the waitress. "Black coffee, no sugar." "Who's watching me?" Emily felt her heart race. "Marshall." Waited for the waitress to leave before answering. "The same people who created the bison you acquired. What do you know about Project Watchtower?" "Only what I've managed to dig up on my own, that it involves animal experiments to create organic sentinels." The ex-military man nodded slowly. "That's the tip of the iceberg. Project Watchtower started 15 years ago as a joint initiative between the Department of Defense and private biotech firms. The original goal was to create animals with enhanced capabilities for border surveillance and hard-to-reach areas." He took a sip of the coffee that had just arrived. But like every military project involving scientific advancements, the objectives began to expand. "What kind of experiments do they perform on these animals?" Emily asked, dreading the answer. Marshall looked out the window as if checking whether anyone was watching before continuing. "Neural implants connected directly to the cerebral cortex, genetic modifications to enhance processing power and memory, advanced behavioral conditioning." His eyes hardened. "Basically, they turn animals into biological computers, capable of collecting and transmitting information." "But that's," Emily searched for the right word, "unethical, cruel." "It's efficient," Marshall replied emotionlessly. "A modified animal can infiltrate areas where conventional technology would be detected. It can monitor conversations, movements, recognize faces and patterns, and most importantly, no one suspects a grazing cow or a stray dog. Emily felt nauseous imagining what Montana might have endured. "And this buffalo you acquired," Marshall continued, leaning forward, "must be special, very special, because no specimen from Project Watchtower should be roaming freely." "What makes it different?" "Most animals in the project accept the programming without resistance. Their brains are reconfigured to obey. But occasionally, anomalies emerge. Animals that resist, that develop a kind of self-awareness beyond the programming." He paused. "We called them the awakened." Emily remembered Montana's piercing gaze, the tear she had seen roll from his eye. "So Montana awakened?" "Montana!" Marshall let out a dry chuckle. "You named him. Interesting." He leaned back in his chair. "Yes, it seems your buffalo is an awakened one, and that makes him extremely valuable and dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "Dangerous to the project. An animal that resists programming represents a flaw in the system. Worse, it's evidence that the project exists, something the government vehemently denies." Marshall lowered his voice. "Besides, there are rumors that some awakened ones have developed abilities even the scientists didn't predict." "What kind of abilities?" "Non-verbal communication with humans, the ability to influence other animals, photographic memory." He hesitated. "Some reports even mention rudimentary telepathy." If you found this story interesting, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you're watching from and let's continue. Emily Carter returned to the ranch with her mind racing. The conversation with Marshall had lasted nearly 2 hours, each revelation more unsettling than the last. The former, Soldier explained that he had worked as security for Project Watchtower for 3 years, before voluntarily leaving after witnessing the extremes scientists were willing to go in the name of scientific progress. "I need to examine Montana more closely," Marshall had said at the end of their talk. "If he's truly awakened, we need to understand what he knows and protect him." They agreed he would visit the ranch the next morning. For now, Emily had strict instructions. Avoid using phones to discuss the matter, turn off any electronic devices near the buffalo, and most importantly, watch for any unusual behavior from the animal. "They may already know where you are," Marshall warned, "but they probably won't act while they're monitoring to assess what you know. Use that to your advantage." A black car had been following Emily at a discreet distance since she left the cafe. She'd noticed it in the rearview mirror but remained calm, following Marshall's instructions. "Be predictable. Don't let on that you've noticed the surveillance." When she arrived at the ranch, Emily parked the truck and went about her usual routine, entering the house to drop off her bag before heading to the stable to check on Montana. The buffalo was in his usual spot, seemingly motionless, but his eyes seemed more alert, as if something had changed. "Hey, big guy," she said softly, approaching carefully. "How are you feeling today?" To her surprise, Montana tilted his head slightly toward her, a subtle movement but significant for an animal who rarely showed any reaction. "You understand what's happening, don't you?" Emily whispered, sitting on a nearby hay bale. "I know you can't answer, but I think you get more than they realize." The buffalo blinked slowly in an almost human gesture. Emily remembered Marshall's description of awakened animals and their capacity for non-verbal communication. Deciding to test the theory, she grabbed the notebook and pen she always carried for notes on the animals she treated. 2 blinks for yes, 1 for no. "Do you understand what I'm saying?" Slowly, deliberately, Montana blinked twice. Emily's heart raced. She glanced around, making sure they were alone before continuing. "Did they experiment on you at Horizon Ranch?" 2 blinks. "Did you escape from there?" 1 blink. "Did they send you to the auction on purpose?" 2 blinks. A chill ran down Emily's spine. Why? Why would they do that? Montana just stared at her, the limitation of blink communication becoming clear. Emily bit her lip, thinking about how to proceed. "Let me try another way. Do you have something they want back?" 2 blinks. more emphatic this time. Is it related to the implants in you? 2 blinks again. Emily remembered the infinity-shaped scar behind Montana's ear. Does it have to do with that mark? A single, slow blink. Is it something inside you? 2 blinks. The young veterinarian felt her stomach drop with realization. Montana wasn't just an experiment. He carried something important, something Horizon Ranch wanted back. Information, technology. The possibilities were terrifying. A faint noise outside the stable made them both turn their heads. Emily rose cautiously and walked to the door, peering through the crack. No one was visible, but the feeling of being watched was undeniable. Returning to Montana's side, Emily lowered her voice even further. They're watching us, aren't they? 2 blinks. Tomorrow, someone who might be able to help is coming. A former soldier named Marshall. At the name, Montana suddenly stirred, standing for the first time since Emily had brought him to the ranch. His eyes showed an urgency she hadn't seen before. Do you know Marshall? 2 blinks, followed by a head movement that seemed to signal caution. He's not trustworthy. A hesitant blink, then 2. It was as if the animal was trying to communicate something more complex than a simple yes or no. I'm not sure I understand, Emily began, but was interrupted by a sharp sound from her phone. It was a privacy breach alert from the app Nathan had installed remotely. The message on the screen was clear. Your phone is being monitored. Communication not secure. Emily turned off the device immediately, her heart racing. The situation was escalating faster than she'd anticipated. She glanced at Montana, who remained alert, his eyes fixed on the stable door. I need to get you out of here, she murmured, more to herself than to the buffalo. But how do I move an animal your size without drawing attention? That's when she noticed something unusual happening with Montana. The buffalo had closed his eyes and seemed to be concentrating intensely. A faint tremor ran through his massive body. Emily watched, fascinated and uneasy, unable to comprehend what was happening. Then, as if answering an unspoken question, a strange sensation flooded her mind. Not exactly words, but impressions, images. She saw herself driving her pickup truck down an unfamiliar dirt road, arriving at a hidden cave nestled in the mountains, a safe place. When the sensation faded, Emily was breathless, as if she'd run a marathon. Montana stared at her expectantly. Was that you? She whispered, incredulous. Did you? Show me that? 2 blinks followed by a nod toward the stable exit. You want me to take you there? Now? 2 urgent blinks. Emily understood the gravity of the situation. If what Marshall had said about rudimentary telepathy was true, and if Montana had really shown her a safe location, they needed to act immediately, before the unknown watchers decided to intervene. Night had fallen by the time Emily finished her preparations. Acting naturally to avoid suspicion, she went through her usual routine, ate dinner, watched TV for a while, and turned off the lights as if going to sleep. But instead of lying down, she dressed in dark clothes and waited patiently by the back window. The plan was simple but risky. Around midnight, when she noticed the surveillance car seemed less attentive, only one person visible at the wheel, likely tired after hours of monitoring, Emily slipped silently out the back door, staying in the shadows as she approached the stable. Montana was alert, as if he'd sensed her approach before she even entered. His eyes gleamed in the darkness with an almost supernatural intensity. We're ready, Emily whispered, adjusting the rope she would use as a guide. Let's try to get out without the trailer. Do you think you can follow me quietly to the pickup truck? Montana blinked twice, accepting the improvisation of the situation. It wasn't ideal to transport an animal of that size without proper equipment, but circumstances demanded adaptation. Carefully, Emily opened the side door of the stable, rarely used and positioned out of sight from the surveillance car. A narrow trail led to a wooded area that in turn looped around the property until it reached near the garage where the pickup was parked. Easy now, she murmured, guiding the animal out. To her surprise, Montana moved with impressive agility and silence for a creature of his size. It was as if he perfectly understood the need for discretion. Step by step, woman and beast advanced along the trail, shielded by the darkness of the moonless night and the shadows of the trees. A branch snapped under Montana's hooves halfway through. The sound, amplified by the night's silence, seemed to echo across the entire property. Emily froze, her heart racing as she watched the surveillance car. For a tense moment, it seemed the driver had noticed something. The silhouette shifted, seemingly looking around, but after a few agonizing seconds, it settled back into place. Emily exhaled the breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She signaled for Montana to keep moving, now with even more caution. When they finally reached the garage, another challenge presented itself: how to load a full-grown buffalo into the bed of a pickup truck without making noise. As if reading her thoughts, Montana positioned himself beside the vehicle and, with surprisingly controlled effort, leaped into the bed. The truck swayed slightly under his weight, but the sound was muffled by the old padding Emily had strategically placed earlier as part of her normal routine of transporting farm supplies. "Impressive," she murmured, awed by the animal's intelligence and body control. Quickly, Emily covered Montana with a dark tarp, not ideal for the animal's comfort, but necessary to avoid detection. Then she climbed into the cab and turned the key, praying the old engine wouldn't choose that moment to fail. The pickup started on the first try, its familiar rumble breaking the night's silence. Emily turned on the headlights and began, driving calmly toward the main road, as if she were just heading out for a routine nighttime emergency, the kind any rural veterinarian might face. In the rearview mirror, she saw lights flicker on in the surveillance car. They had noticed her movement. Within seconds, the vehicle began following her, maintaining a distance that tried to seem casual, but was obvious to Emily now that she knew what to look for. Following. The mental images Montana had shared with her, Emily took the main road toward town as she normally would. But after a few miles, at a sharp curve near a closed gas station, she executed her planned maneuver. She suddenly accelerated, pulled into the station's lot, and exited on the opposite side, taking an almost invisible dirt road partially hidden by overgrowth. The trailing car continued down the main road for a moment before realizing the trick. By the time it turned around, Emily had already gained precious minutes of lead time. The dirt road was narrow and full of potholes, but Emily knew the area well. She had grown up exploring those mountains with her grandparents and knew paths that didn't appear on any maps. She accelerated as much as the terrain allowed, the jolts making the pickup truck groan in protest. "Hold on, Montana," she shouted, hoping the buffalo could keep its balance under the tarp. After 20 minutes of dangerously fast driving over rough terrain, Emily spotted her destination, a rock formation that, to the untrained eye, looked like just another steep slope. But hidden among the rocks was an opening, a small cave she and her grandfather had discovered years ago while hunting for mushrooms in the area. "We're here," she announced, parking the truck in a spot concealed by trees. Pulling back the tarp, she found Montana visibly agitated but physically unharmed. The buffalo leaped from the truck bed with the same surprising agility as before and immediately started walking toward the opening in the rock, as if it knew the place. "How did you know about this spot?" Emily asked, following it. "I've never brought anyone here." Montana simply kept moving forward, stepping confidently into the darkness of the cave. Emily turned on her phone's flashlight and followed, noticing how the cave was deeper than she remembered. The high ceiling comfortably accommodated even the buffalo's imposing size. After about 50 meters, the passage widened into a natural chamber with a small stream running along one wall. Emily watched as Montana walked straight to a specific corner of the cave and began scraping the ground with its hoof. "What are you doing?" she asked, moving closer. The buffalo kept at it stubbornly until Emily aimed the light at the spot. To her surprise, beneath a thin layer of dirt, there was something metallic. Kneeling, she carefully dug with her hands until she uncovered what looked like a small metal box about the size of a book, with a strange symbol engraved on the lid. "It's the same symbol as the scar behind Montana's ear, the infinity sign. What is this?" she murmured, holding the box in her hands. "How did you know this was here?" Montana stared at her intensely, and again, Emily felt that strange sensation. images flooding her mind. This time, she saw a man in a white lab coat, a laboratory, and Montana undergoing some kind of procedure. She saw the box being implanted somewhere inside the animal and later removed and hidden in this very cave. When the vision ended, Emily was breathless, clutching the mysterious box with trembling hands. "They put this inside you?" she asked, horrified. "And then, did someone remove it and hide it here?" 2 blinks confirmed her theory. Emily examined the box more closely. There was no visible lock, only the engraved symbol. When she ran her fingers over it, however, she felt the surface react to her touch, as if recognizing some kind of fingerprint. "This is too advanced to be in the hands of a ranch in rural Colorado," she murmured, intrigued. "What's inside?" Before she could investigate further, the distant sound of an engine caught her attention. Someone was approaching the cave. "They found us," Emily said, quickly stashing the box in her backpack. "We need to go deeper." The sound of engines grew louder. Emily turned off her phone's flashlight, plunging the cave into near total darkness. Only a faint glow from the distant entrance allowed her to make out silhouettes. "Come on, Montana," she whispered, guiding the animal further into the cave. "We need to hide." To her surprise, instead of following her, the buffalo moved in another direction, heading toward what appeared to be a solid rock wall. Confused, Emily followed, groping in the dark. When she reached the wall, she realized there was a narrow crack, almost imperceptible, but just wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. "How do you know this place so well?" she murmured in awe. Following the buffalo, Emily squeezed through the opening, finding herself in a smaller chamber, completely isolated from the main entrance. The space was naturally warmer and, strangely, there was a faint greenish glow emanating from small crystals embedded in the ceiling. "Incredible," she whispered, looking around. Distant voices echoed from the cave entrance. Emily recognized one of them immediately. Marshall. How had he found the place? Was it a coincidence or... "He tracked my phone," she murmured, struck by the realization. Even though she'd turned it off, it could have been traced before then. She bitterly regretted mentioning her escape plans to anyone. Montana shifted restlessly, his eyes fixed on the backpack where Emily had stored the mysterious box. Understanding the hint, she took it out and, sitting against a rock, examined the object under the dim glow of the crystals. The box was made of a metal Emily couldn't identify. It wasn't aluminum or ordinary steel. It was roughly the size of a paperback book, with perfectly smooth edges and only the infinity symbol marking its surface. There were no visible locks or hinges. "How does this open?" she whispered, more to herself than to Montana. The buffalo approached, gently nudging the box with its snout. Again, that strange sensation flooded Emily's mind, not just images, this time, but a deeper understanding. She saw herself pressing the infinity symbol in a specific sequence, first the left loop, then the right, then the center where they crossed. With trembling hands, Emily followed the sequence. To her surprise, the metal reacted to her touch, warming slightly. After the third press, a thin line of bluish light traced the lid of the box, which opened silently, revealing its contents. Inside lay a small device, similar to a flash drive, but with connections Emily had never seen before. Beside it, a carefully folded piece of paper. Gently, she unfolded it, revealing a handwritten note in precise script. "If you're reading this, the experiment was successful. This device contains all the evidence of Project Watchtower, including records of ethical violations, embezzlement of public funds, and unauthorized human experiments. The truth must come to light, but be careful who you trust. Not everyone opposing the project has noble motives. The password to unlock the files is the date of the first successful brain transfer, 08/17/2019, Dr. Helena Moraes." Emily read the note 3 times, trying to process the magnitude of what she held. The device wasn't just proof, it was an evidence bomb that could expose the entire project. "Dr. Helena Moraes," Emily murmured. "Who are you? And how did you know we'd find this?" Montana shifted restlessly, his eyes fixed on the entrance of the secret chamber. The voices were closer now, Emily could make out at least 3 different people. Must be here somewhere, Marshall's voice said. The tracker signal points to this area. I don't understand why she'd run, replied an unfamiliar woman's voice. If she really has the buffalo, she should understand the importance of cooperating with us. Maybe because you threatened her? The third voice belonged to a younger man, his tone dripping with sarcasm. Not the smartest approach, Colonel. Quiet, Mendez, the woman snapped. Remember your place. Emily silently tucked the device and the note into the inner pocket of her jacket and placed the empty box back in her backpack. If they were discovered, she didn't want them finding the real treasure. Montana nudged her shoulder gently with his snout. That familiar sensation flooded her mind again, but this time it was different. No images or instructions, just an intense feeling of urgency and the clear impression that there was another way out of the chamber they were in. Is there another exit? Emily whispered, scanning the area. The buffalo moved toward the back of the chamber, where the glow of the crystals was dimmer. Emily followed, carefully feeling along the rocky walls. Her fingers found a natural opening, too narrow for Montana, but just wide enough for a person. You won't fit, she murmured worriedly. Montana stared at her with an intensity that conveyed one clear thought. She had to go without him. I won't leave you here, Emily protested, feeling tears well up in her eyes. The buffalo gently nudged her toward the opening, the message unmistakable. She was the one who needed to escape with the evidence. She was the only one who could expose the truth. I promise I'll come back for you, Emily whispered, stroking the animal's head for the first time. At that moment, voices sounded dangerously close to the crevice leading into the hidden chamber. There are footprints here, Marshall announced, and they look fresh. The narrow passage stretched several meters through the rock, so tight in places that Emily had to turn sideways, holding her breath. The only light came from her phone, which she used with extreme caution, afraid the glow might betray her to her pursuers. Crawling in some stretches, fighting claustrophobia in others, she forced herself forward, driven by the silent promise she'd made to Montana. After what felt like an eternity, the natural tunnel began to widen, and a cool breeze brushed her face. Moments later, she emerged, on a different slope of the mountain, under a starry sky just beginning to lighten on the horizon. Dawn was approaching. Quickly orienting herself, Emily realized she was on the opposite side of the rock formation, at least 3 kilometers from where she'd left her truck. Staying low and using the vegetation as cover, she began descending the slope, putting distance between herself and the cave. She didn't dare return to the vehicle. It would surely be watched. As she walked, her mind raced. Who was Dr. Helena? Moraes? How did she know about the cave? And what was her connection to Montana? The note mentioned brain transfer. Was that what they had done to the buffalo? Implanted something in its brain that made it more than just an animal? After about an hour of cautious walking, Emily spotted a side road. She was exhausted, her knees scraped and her clothes dirty, but the device remained secure in her inner pocket. She needed to find a place to analyze its contents, and more importantly, she needed trustworthy allies. Sophia was the first name that came to mind. Her college friend lived in a small apartment in town and, though skeptical at first, had witnessed Montana's unusual behavior during the consultation with Dr. Victoria Stone. Plus, she knew Nathan, the hacker, who had already shown a willingness to help. Walking along the roadside, Emily finally reached a gas station where she could use a payphone to call Sophia. 15 minutes later, her friend arrived in her compact car, her face a mix of worry and relief. "My God, Emily, what happened to you?" she exclaimed upon seeing her friend's condition. "It's a long story," Emily replied, quickly getting into the car. "Can we go to your place? I need somewhere safe." During the drive, Emily briefly recounted the events of the last few hours, from escaping with Montana to discovering the mysterious box and Dr. Helena's note. "This is insane," Sophia remarked, shaking her head as she drove. "It sounds like something out of a conspiracy movie." "I know," Emily agreed, "but I saw it with my own eyes, and Montana's behavior. Sophia, he communicated with me. Somehow he showed me images, thoughts. Sophia gave her a skeptical look. Brain transfer, she repeated, referring to the note. You think they put something in his brain? Or someone, Emily replied thoughtfully. What if the awakened that Marshall mentioned aren't just animals with enhanced abilities? What if they're people? The silence in the car grew, heavy as Sophia processed the implication. Are you suggesting that a person's consciousness was transferred into the brain of a buffalo? She finally asked, her voice wavering between disbelief and horror. It sounds absurd, I know, but it would explain both his behavior and their desperate interest in getting him back. Arriving at Sophia's small apartment, Emily took a quick shower and borrowed clothes from her friend. Nathan was contacted and arrived half an hour later, bringing a specialized laptop that, according to him, was impossible to trace. Let's see what we have on this device, he said, connecting the small gadget found in the box. A password screen appeared immediately. Emily typed in the date mentioned in the note, Do 8/17/2019. The password was accepted, and a massive amount of files began opening automatically. Wow, murmured Nathan, his eyes wide as he scanned the contents. This is monumental. The three spent the next few hours absorbing information that defied comprehension. Detailed reports on Project Watchtower revealed that the program had begun as a military-funded brain-machine interface research initiative. The early phase involved implanting devices in animals to remotely control their movements, literally turning them into living cameras for espionage. But the reports from Dr. Helena Moraes, the project's lead neuroscientist, described how the research had evolved into something far more ambitious and disturbing, the complete transfer of human brain patterns into animal hosts. Initial tests used synthetic neural data, Emily read aloud from one of the reports, but significant results were only achieved when we utilized full scans of real human brains. Subject 0, a terminal volunteer with amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, was the first to have their neural patterns fully mapped and transferred into a canine host. This is insane, Sophia said, her voice trembling. They're basically putting human minds into animal bodies? Not exactly, Nathan explained, scrolling through technical documents. It doesn't seem to be a full consciousness. Transfer, it's more like an overlay. The animal retains its basic functions and instincts, but gains aspects of the human donor's personality, memories, and cognitive abilities. Emily felt a chill. And Montana. Who's in it? The answer came when Nathan opened a folder titled Subject 88B. The file contained photos and data of a black buffalo, marked with the same infinity symbol Emily had seen behind Montana's ear. Next to it were details about the neural donor, Dr. Helena Moraes. My God, whispered Emily. The lead scientist herself used her neural patterns in the buffalo. According to the project notes, that specific experiment had been conducted without official authorization as a side test Dr. Helena had secretly carried out. The last report, dated just 3 months prior, indicated the experiment had been discovered by the project's administration and disciplinary action was being considered. She rebelled against the very project, Nathan concluded. Used herself as a test subject and then implanted all this evidence into the buffalo, sending it far away before they could catch her. And now I understand why Montana reacted to Marshall's name, Emily said, opening a personnel file. Colonel Marshall, Farikra, head of security for Project Vigil until 2020, when he was officially discharged. But according to Dr. Helena's notes, he never really left. He just went underground, tasked with recovering lost assets. He lied to you, Sophia concluded. He was never against the project. And the woman in the cave must be the current director, Nathan added. Colonel Evelyn Graves, according to these documents. Emily abruptly stood from her chair, walking to the window. The sun was already high in the sky. We need to go back, she declared firmly. Montana, or rather Dr. Helena, is still there. Are you crazy? Sophia exclaimed. They probably have the cave surrounded. Besides, Nathan added, we need to decide what to do with this information. It's evidence of serious ethical and legal violations committed with public funds. Emily looked at her friends, her expression resolute. You're right. We need to be strategic. She took a deep breath. Nathan, can you make secure copies of the files? Of course, but do that first. Later, we'll need help to share this information the right way, through channels that can't easily be silenced. She hesitated. And we need to find a way to rescue Dr. Helena, whatever's left of her in Montana. There's one more thing you all need to see, said Nathan, opening a final file. It's a personal letter from Dr. Helena. On the screen, a simple document appeared, dated 3 days before the auction where Emily had acquired Montana. To whoever finds this evidence, if you're reading this, it means my plan worked, at least partially. I used my own neural patterns in Subject 88B, which I informally named Hope, as a last resort to preserve what I discovered about Project Watchtower. The experiment isn't perfect. My consciousness isn't fully present in the animal host, just fragments, memories, and basic impulses. Enough to guide the bison to the evidence, but not enough to keep my personality intact. The project began with legitimate scientific intentions, but was corrupted by military and commercial ambitions. They're planning large-scale tests, using the implants to create sentinels across the country, monitoring citizens without their knowledge or consent. Even more disturbing, I uncovered plans for the next phase, using the technology to preserve the minds of powerful figures beyond their physical bodies, creating a form of artificial immortality for only a privileged few. If you find this device, you have two choices: destroy the evidence and go on with your life, or expose the truth and face the consequences. Whatever you decide, the choice is yours. Helena Moraes. Silence filled the room as the three processed the implications of the letter. So the choice is ours, Sophia finally said. What do we do? Emily looked out the window toward the mountains, where Montana and whatever remained of Dr. Helena waited. We expose the truth, she answered firmly. And we save her. The sun was beginning to set as 3 cars quietly approached the base of the mountain where the cave was located. From the first vehicle stepped Emily, Sophia, and Nathan, now joined by Olivia Grant, an investigative journalist Nathan knew from college. From the second, 4 federal officers emerged, led by Agent Daniel Shaw, who had received a partial copy of the evidence found on the device. The third car carried Dr. Victoria Stone and 2 assistants, equipped with veterinary tools and a specialized transport crate. Let's go over the plan, Agent Shaw said quietly, gathering the group. Our intel indicates there are at least 5 Project Watchtower operatives still in the area, including Colonel Marshall and Colonel Graves. They're keeping the bison under surveillance, but haven't removed it from the cave yet. They're waiting for reinforcements and specialized equipment, Nathan added, having intercepted communications using the passwords found in Dr. Helena's files. They believe the bison carries valuable neural implants that could be damaged in a rushed extraction. Our advantage is surprise, Shaw continued. They don't know we have the evidence, and they aren't expecting an official operation. My team will create a distraction at the main entrance, while Emily and Dr. Stone access the cave through the secondary entrance Emily discovered during her escape. Emily nodded, her heart racing. The last 24 hours had been a whirlwind of planning and preparation. While Nathan worked on the digital evidence with Olivia, she and Sophia had contacted Dr. Victoria Stone, who immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. The veterinarian, in turn, had connections in the federal police that enabled an urgent meeting with Agent Daniel Shaw. What about the press? Asked Sophia, looking at Olivia. I have 3 different media outlets ready to publish simultaneously as soon as we give the signal, replied the journalist. International platforms too. Once the story leaks, it'll be impossible to contain. Emily checked the small device she carried one more time, a perfect replica of the original, but containing only harmless files. The real device was secure, with copies already distributed to key individuals. Remember, she said, our priority is Montana. Dr. Helena sacrificed everything to expose the truth, and we won't leave her behind, even if she's now different. The car Groups split up, each taking their positions. Emily and Dr. Victoria Stone began climbing the mountainside, searching for the small opening Emily had escaped through. Sophia and Nathan stayed at the base, coordinating communications, while Olivia prepared to document everything. The path up the slope was steep and dangerous in the twilight, but Emily pressed forward with determination, guiding Dr. Stone between rocks and thorny bushes. After 20 minutes of careful climbing, they reached the opening. "It's here," Emily whispered. "The tunnel is narrow, but we can get through." Equipped with headlamps and small backpacks carrying only the essentials, the two women entered the passage. The journey was slow and uncomfortable, but eventually they reached the hidden chamber where Emily had left Montana. To her surprise and relief, the buffalo was still there, lying in the same corner, its eyes glowing in the dark as the headlamps illuminated it. "Montana," Emily called softly, stepping closer. "Dr. Helena, we're here to help." The animal rose slowly, its movements revealing exhaustion. Emily noticed needle marks on its neck, likely sedatives administered by the agents to keep it docile, while they figured out how to transport it. "They've already been here," Dr. Stone whispered, examining the marks. "But they didn't take, because they need specialized equipment to preserve the implants." Emily approached cautiously, extending her hand as she had done so many times before. To her relief, Montana recognized her immediately, touching her palm with its muzzle. The familiar sensation of non-verbal communication enveloped her, but it was weaker now, like a radio signal losing strength. Still, Emily managed to catch fragments: gratitude, urgency, and farewell. "She's fading," Emily realized with a pang in her heart. Dr. Helena's neural patterns are dissipating in Montana's brain. Dr. Victoria Stone quickly prepared a syringe. "It's a neural stabilizer," she explained quietly. "Based on the formulas we found in the archives, it may not fully restore the patterns, but it should halt the degradation." As she administered the injection, the radio on Emily's belt crackled. "Distraction initiated," Nathan's voice reported. "Watch agents moving toward the main entrance. Path clear in approximately 3 minutes." "Understood," Emily replied. "We have the target, and will begin extraction as soon as possible." The stabilizer's effect was almost immediate. Montana seemed more alert, his eyes regaining some of the intensity that had struck Emily during their first encounter. When he locked eyes with her, the mental communication returned, clearer now. "It worked. You found the evidence." It wasn't exactly a voice, but concepts and emotions that translated into understanding in Emily's mind. "Yes," she answered aloud, "and we're about to make it public. The world will know the truth about Project Watch. Thank you, there isn't much of Helena left in me now. Just fragments, purposes, but it's enough to know we made a difference." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. It was surreal to speak with a fragmented human consciousness inside a buffalo, but the emotional connection was undeniable. "We're getting you out of here," she promised. "The doctors at the university think they can stabilize the implants, maybe even—" "No." The refusal was gentle but firm. "This is not an existence meant to be prolonged. Helena knew that when she began the process. It was a final sacrifice, not an attempt at survival." Emily furrowed her brow, confused. "But you deserve to live. What remains of me will serve its purpose once the truth is revealed. After that, Montana deserves to just be Montana again." Dr. Victoria Stone, who had been observing the interaction without fully understanding what was happening, touched Emily's shoulder. "We have to go now," she warned. "The window of opportunity is closing." Reluctantly, Emily nodded. They carefully guided Montana toward the fissure leading to the main chamber of the cave. The animal moved with surprising agility despite its size, as if the heightened presence of Dr. Helena's consciousness gave it greater bodily control. In the main chamber, they found Agent Daniel Shaw, who had entered with his team through the main entrance. "Operation successful," he reported. "Marshall and 2 other agents are in custody. Colonel Graves escaped, but we have teams in pursuit." "What about the reinforcements that were coming?" Emily asked. "Intercepted on the road by a routine police barricade," the agent replied with a slight smile. We'll have a few hours before the project's higher-ups realize what's happening." The exit from the cave was tense but uneventful. Montana was carefully guided into an animal transport vehicle waiting a few miles away. Throughout the journey, Emily stayed by its side, sensing that the connection between them was shifting, growing both more intimate and more distant, as if Dr. Helena was saying goodbye. "The stabilizer is functioning differently than expected," came the fragmented thought. "It's accelerating the process. I can feel it." "What process?" Emily asked, alarmed. "What's happening?" "Separation. Integration. Human neural patterns are disintegrating, but part of them is being absorbed. Montana is evolving." Dr. Victoria Stone, monitoring the animal's vital signs, noticed something strange on the portable monitor. "His brain waves are reconfiguring," she remarked, perplexed. "I've never seen anything like it." When they arrived at the animal sanctuary prepared for Montana, an isolated, secure location on the university's property, news had already begun to spread. Olivia's phone wouldn't stop ringing, and the first headlines appeared on news sites. "Scandal: Secret Government Project Conducts Banned Experiments on Animals." "Exclusive expose. Scientist transfers own consciousness into buffalo to reveal atrocities." "Leaked documents reveal project." "Watcher: Aim to create artificial immortality for the elite." The following days were a whirlwind of testimonies, interviews, and official investigations. The evidence was irrefutable: documents, videos, financial records, all confirming the existence and disturbing nature of Project Watcher. Politicians resigned, scientists were indicted, and the public demanded greater transparency and ethical regulation in advanced research. Emily established a routine of daily visits to Montana at the sanctuary. Each day, she noticed the telepathic communication shifting. It was no longer fragments of Dr. Helena Moraes' consciousness, but something new, unique, an intelligence blending animal instinct with human understanding. 3 weeks after the rescue, on a particularly quiet afternoon, Emily found Montana grazing peacefully in the sanctuary's open field. As she approached, she immediately sensed something had changed. The animal's gaze was different, serene, present, but without the almost supernatural intensity from before. "Dr. Helena?" she called softly, touching the buffalo's neck. There was no telepathic response, just the calm gaze of an animal that, though extraordinarily intelligent, was now simply a buffalo. Silent tears streamed down Emily's face. It was the end of one journey and the beginning of another. Dr. Helena Moraes had completed her mission and finally found rest. 6 months later, Emily completed her doctorate in cognitive neuroscience, a field she'd never imagined pursuing before the events with Montana. Her thesis on shared consciousness and ethical neural transfer, carefully based on recovered data from Project Watcher, revolutionized how the scientific community approached these topics. The animal sanctuary she founded with the government settlement now housed dozens of animals rescued from illegal labs. Montana naturally was the most famous resident, voluntarily participating in non-invasive studies seeking to understand the permanent changes in his brain. On a fall afternoon, Emily sat on a bench watching Montana interact with other sanctuary animals. The buffalo displayed an unusual understanding and empathy, often mediating between different species, as if he could comprehend each one's needs. Sophia, now the veterinary director of the sanctuary, sat beside her friend. "He continues to surprise us," she remarked. "The latest tests show activity in brain areas that normally wouldn't be active in bison. It's as if he inherited something from her," Emily finished. "Not the consciousness or the memories, but something more fundamental, a new way of perceiving the world." "An awakening," Sophia said, smiling. "Yes," Emily agreed, watching. The bison paused its grazing and looked directly at her as if it knew they were talking about it. The most important awakening of all. In that moment, when Emily's eyes met Montana's, she felt one last faint communication, not words or images, just a feeling of deep gratitude and peace. The legacy of Dr. Helena Moraes lived on not only in the political and ethical changes her sacrifice had sparked, but also in the new understanding emerging about consciousness, the connection between species, and the very boundaries of humanity. The bison that had awakened had in turn awakened something in humanity, a new perspective on animals, technology, and our ethical responsibility toward both. And for Emily, this was only the beginning of an even deeper journey.